Hello, everyone. I wanted to do a video discussing the first essay on the first part of the course. Maybe I think that, in fact, the way that the assignment is written is perfectly clear. That is, I couldn't have written it. I can't think of becoming any more clearer in terms of what's actually there. So I wouldn't say there's any mystery there or anything that is left unexplained, but I would like to do a video just to elaborate on things, maybe point a few things out. Okay, so this is your first essay for the course. It may also be the first philosophy essay you've ever written. So there may be some new aspects here that maybe you're not used to writing in a certain way, or you're not used to approaching material in the way that a philosophy paper kind of demands. I don't think there's any kind of mystery, but it is a paper that every philosophy paper that you write should be based on ideas. Right? It's about ideas. It's not about information. It's a speculative thing. You're engaging in a creative process of reasoning with ideas. And I think that's how you should think of it. It's not a book report. I really want to emphasize that. You give an account of what you've read, but that's to set up something more important, which is to make your own point. So I want you to keep that in mind as you write, and especially as you rewrite. As you look over what you have and think about whether you're ready to submit it. Does it contain ideas? Does it make a point? Is there some overall theme or point or opinion that interpretation could be all of those things that you're making in the paper? If it is a flat sort of, this is what this says and this is what that says, you kind of not completed the thing. Let's just keep that in mind. To get down to the details of it, you want to choose two of the three readings. And let's just be clear, because there were more than three readings, but what I mean by the three readings are so all I'm asking you to do is to choose two of these and do a comparative essay on that. So the general idea is to compare the moral outlooks of two of these readings with each other. The moral outlook of the Ten Commandments, let's say, with the moral outlook of Ecclesiastes, or the moral outlook of the Sermon on the Mount with the Ten Commandments, or with Ecclesiastes. Any combination is fine. But let's look at what. So first thing to do is to choose the two writings that I suppose, I don't know how you do this except to say that you're more interested. The two of them that you're most interested in, or you think you have the most to say about. That's personal choice. Second step, give an account of the overall moral outlook of each text based on a close reading. Well, that's maybe the hardest part. Let's get the overall moral outlook. What do I mean by that? Um, when we look at a text like the Sermon on the Mount, let's say, Jesus says a lot of things. A lot of things, a lot of different things. He says, he says, and on and on and on, right? Just as an example, this is a lot of things. So if I ask you to give me a characterization of the overall moral outlook of the Sermon on the Mount, which something you'll need to do if you choose it. What I'm asking for is for you to, let's say, well, give an interpretation. You can't just sort of list these different things because they say different things and it's not clear how they relate to each other. What you're doing when you give the overall outlook, the overall moral outlook of the discourse is to say, well, he says this, he says that, says the other thing, but it all sort of tends towards this. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like you have to take some chances here and say, I don't know. And whatever it is, whatever your choice is. What is the overall message? What is, in your interpretation, the general ethical character of the speech? So that's hard work, right? Because it's not clear what that is, right? It's your interpretation, and it has to be based upon a reading of the text, like creative reading of the text. If we this is just a random selection of things that he says, but they're pretty memorable things that he says. Does this all sort of, is there a commonality between these things? And I guess, yes, I'm asking for the commonality. Now, what do they all have in common? How do these things fit together into one overall moral teaching? First of all, let me say again, that's not easy to do. Secondly, there's no one answer. Right? There's no one interpretation of the overall meaning of a text like the Sermon on the Mount. It's subject to many interpretations. The important thing is to base your interpretation on the details of the actual text. To look at, again, this is just, don't get bogged down in this particular selection because I just did it from from memory, what was prominent. What do all these things have in common? What do they all tend towards? How are they all representatives of the same overall moral message? So that part of it is, I would say, again, maybe that's the hardest part of it, to give an account of the overall moral outlook of each of the two texts based on a close reading that is, and all I mean by that is, based on what is actually said. And I want you to show that. Don't base it on your preconceptions about Christianity, or don't base it on your preconceptions about the place of the Ten Commandments. Base it on what you're actually reading for this course. I would say that Ecclesiastes is probably, for most of us, the least familiar of the three. So it might actually be a good one to choose because we have fewer preconceptions about Ecclesiastes. We actually have to read it to find out what it's about, whereas we all think we know what the Ten Commandments say, and we all think we know what Jesus' moral teaching was in the Gospels. Ecclesiastes, you actually have to read it and sort of figure it out. Well, I want you to do that with any text that you choose. Right? So that is a difficult thing, step 2. And I would say the most difficult thing. The third step, the second major part of your essay is then what follows. How do these two moral outlooks compare with each other? What can you conclude about their relation to each other? Are they compatible? Are they incompatible? Is there somewhere that you can say that their messages are similar, or maybe even a common moral overall message, or are they just really so different from each other that They cannot be usefully said to be part of the same moral outlook. It's really, you do the really hard work of giving an account and making your interpretive choices in this step here. And then I think you free yourself up by saying, well, how do these two texts relate? I mean, does Ecclesiastes have anything in common with the Sermon on the Mount? Does the Sermon on the Mount have anything in common with the Ten Commandments? Now, as I indicated in the live session, I hope it came through. I never know what, that I'm asking you to sort of come at this freely and choose these texts freely, but it should be said that the Sermon on the Mount references the Ten Commandments, right? At least some of them. That Jesus is well aware that he's part of a tradition, of an ethical tradition that goes back centuries, probably 1,000 years by the time Jesus shows up. The Israelites have been around for a long time, and the law, that begins with the Ten Commandments and extends to so many parts of life, the Mosaic law, the law that God gave to the Israelites while they were wandering in the desert, is a living thing that has been around for a long time, and he feels it necessary to clarify his own relation to it. So that's a special thing. I mean, it's obvious that the Sermon on the Mount is well aware of the Ten Commandments, and Jesus thinks it's an important thing for him to make clear to people how he sees his relationship with that law, which he very explicitly sets out. So you don't have to compare those two, but if you were to compare those two, you really have to take into account that the Sermon on the Mount is well aware of the Ten Commandments and specifically references some of them. So that's about it. I mean, I think that's about as much direction as I can give you. I would really concentrate on this, right? That's really hard work, and don't worry so much about being right or wrong. Worry about whether what you're saying is, in your own opinion, based on the text that you've read, and whether it's credible. I mean, I'm not going to say it's wrong. I don't think there is a wrong answer here. Like, what is the overall moral outlook? But that's something you're going to have to think about. What are these texts really about? That takes a certain amount of abstraction and generalization on your part. I mean, to give you an example, and again, this is just right off the top of my head. I mean, again, right? I mean, that's just maybe not throwaway, but it's just a speculation. Ecclesiastes is about making do. And what I mean by that is we could say Ecclesiastes is about making do. Human condition is not positive. It's a kind of a grim thing, but we have to make the best of it. And then here's how. It says we should. I mean, that's a throwaway thing. I mean, it is a throwaway thing. It's like saying, I mean, there's a throwaway thing. But these are just examples of that kind of abstraction, generalization that I'm asking you to do in this essay. I mean, I think they're credible claims. or you know, I don't know, maybe that's true or not, right? You make these claims, and they're general claims, the generalizations, and then good essay writing is about specifying then things that actually support those generalizations. So if you say that the Sermon on the Mount is in the last analysis, right? That's an example of the sort of what I'm asking you to do here, the overall message, the commonality, what everything is tending towards in the last analysis. If I had to boil it down, I'd say the Sermon on the Mount is about the power of love. Sure, I would say it's a credible beginning, but then it all depends upon, well, okay, show me how that's true by pointing to specific things in the text. Or if the Ten Commandments is about self-control, then what do you mean by that? Wait, that's interesting, but you need to clarify. That's what writing an essay is really about. So, I hope that this helped a little bit as you approach your first essay for the course. And as always, feel free to contact me if you have any specific questions.